Squachel, Bridget Thanusnut. Welcome and Heichka for checking out SřejÁUTW's presentation. We're excited to share with you about SřejÁUTW's Quant Indigenous Protected and Conserved Area, or IPCA. My name is Bridget Irving and I work for SřejÁUTW First Nation as a fisheries coordinator. I will also be having Lais helping with this presentation, and she works for SřejÁUTW as the interim fisheries manager. In this presentation, we'll explore what an IPCA is and how SřejÁUTW leadership, administration, and community members can work together to plan to take care of the waters and beings within Quant. So what is an IPCA, or Indigenous Protected and Conserved Area? The IPCA Knowledge Basket has defined IPCAs as lands and waters where Indigenous governments have the primary role in protecting, conserving ecosystems through Indigenous laws, governance, and knowledge systems. Now let's check out the video that the IPCA Knowledge Basket has put together that further describes what an IPCA is and what it means to the communities who have them declared.
What are Indigenous Protected and Conserved Areas, or IPCAs? Indigenous Protected and Conserved Areas, or IPCAs, are lands and waters where Indigenous governments have the primary role in protecting and conserving ecosystems through Indigenous laws, governance, and knowledge systems. Culture and language are the heart and soul of an IPCA.
IPCAs isn't something that the provincial or federal government is going to try to do to Indigenous peoples. IPCAs, Indigenous Protected and Conserved Areas, are a tool that's available for Indigenous governments, for Indigenous nations to forward their own biodiversity protection and promotion objectives. IPCAs can only work if it's self-determined by Indigenous peoples themselves.
We Rise Together, the report released by the Indigenous Circle of Experts in 2018 as part of the Canada Pathway to Target 1 process, identifies 3 essential elements of IPCAs. They are Indigenous-led, they represent a long-term commitment to conservation, and they elevate Indigenous rights and responsibilities. Because Indigenous peoples have been caring for their lands and waters since time immemorial, all Indigenous nations would have areas within their territories that could qualify as IPCAs. There are currently upwards of 40 declared IPCAs across Canada. Some are well known and illustrate the range of models available. SĽÁUTW Nation established their first tribal park in 1984, making it one of the first IPCAs in Canada.
It is much, much older than that. It is just the modern articulation, or the current articulation, of what our ancestors have always done. And we have an intergenerational relationship with the lands, the waters, the air, the spirit of the place. We have a responsibility towards it. That is what enshrines any rights that we may have. And there are roles and responsibilities, ecological roles and responsibilities that have been carried out by our families for millennia.
As discussed in the video, nations have been stewarding their territories since time immemorial. IPCAs can act as a modern application of this stewardship and work to communicate values, laws, and knowledge systems to the non-Indigenous public and to the Crown. So here's a list of some of the many benefits IPCAs may bring to the community and the broader public. They advance Indigenous rights, laws, and governance by putting nations in a leadership role over the decisions made on their lands or waters. And when communities manage the fisheries within their IPCAs, they can make decisions that protect traditional fishing sites. They also put conservation at the forefront, boosting biodiversity and the abundance of traditional foods. They increase awareness amongst the non-Indigenous public and create clear rules that can reduce harassment and conflicts for community members who are exercising their rights on the land and water. They also act as a refuge, restoring and protecting waters for future generations. And they create opportunities for communities to connect with the land and waters, encouraging intergenerational teachings and knowledge transfer. Nations are more in tune with observing changes on the water and land and can adapt management strategies quickly. Additionally, as we are aware, everything is connected. Therefore, the benefits to the ecosystem and revitalization of community connection to the water and land has cascading positive effects throughout the entire community. SÉOTW's Quant IPCA was declared in June 2023 in a ceremony held in SÉOTW's Longhouse. Please see the link in the video description to see a short video of this monumental event, as well as a link to the Quant Declaration document. The name Quant means to take care of, protect, or look after. This indicates the stewardship responsibilities that SÉOTW has to this place and the intention behind this declaration. One sentence in the declaration that I think captures the intent of the IPCA quite fulsomely is where it states that this declaration is made to uphold our ancestral responsibilities, to prevent further infringement of our right to carry on fisheries as formerly, to reverse cultural erosion and the trend of declining and mismanaged fisheries, and to provide sustainable and resilient fisheries for future generations. On the map displayed on this slide, the darkened area on the map is what we refer to as the Quant IPCA. The water within this area makes up over 14,000 hectares. This IPCA was declared to affirm SÉOTW's jurisdiction over this marine area. And with numerous major projects underway on the mainland and in the adjacent waters, marine traffic through this area has increased significantly. Given these pressures and the need to respond to emerging funding opportunities tied to marine stewardship and governance, it was critical to act quickly in making this declaration. Now that the IPCA has been established, it provides a strong foundation from which SÉOTW can further define stewardship, governance, and management of this marine space. Here is the design that symbolizes the Quant IPCA, created by SÉOTW's own Douglas or Bear Horn. This design is called Abundance, and Bear describes it as the abundance of salmon and seaweed, which flourish in the waters of Wasanich people and along the shores of our SÉOTW village. For thousands of years, our people have thrived on these gifts, relying on them for nourishment and balance. The Creator's sunlight shines upon our lands and waters, illuminate the blessings of both sea and shore. And on this slide, I'd now like to introduce a key tool for planning and implementing IPCAs, the IPCA Management Plan. This type of plan is a guiding document that outlines visions, goals, and actions, as well as desired outcomes for an IPCA. However, for SÉOTW, the word management doesn't quite reflect the community's relationship to these waters and marine relatives. The community's role is one of care and responsibility and not of control. For that reason, we use the term stewardship plan, which better aligns with the responsibilities given to SÉOTW people by the Creator. Throughout this presentation, we will refer to this as the Quant Stewardship Plan. And as we all know, SÉOTW has been stewarding Quant since time immemorial, as it is directly adjacent to SÉOTW's main village site and has provided abundant resources to the community all of this time. This stewardship has often been undervalued and underappreciated by the Crown and by some members of the public. We hope to change that by implementing a stewardship plan for Quant to bring awareness to SÉOTW's relationship with this place and communicate how the Crown and the public can align with the nation's priorities to care for this area. The stewardship plan will outline what can and can't occur within the IPCA and provide space for elders, youth, and the rest of the community to share their perspectives, ensuring stewardship decisions are made and are community driven. It also serves as a practical guide for staff and leadership, helping to ensure decisions reflect the nation's collective interests. Because SÉOTW declared the Quant IPCA, SÉOTW community and leadership will define the priorities and objectives that will shape this stewardship plan. Key sections that may be included in the stewardship plan are a vision for the future. What do we want the IPCA to look like for future generations? Also, guiding principles grounded in SÉOTW teachings. So what teachings should guide this stewardship plan? Priorities, objectives, and measurable targets. So what are the most important issues that Quant is facing and how can we address these issues? Stewardship strategies. What activities are allowed to happen within the IPCA, as well as a zoning plan driven by the protection of key ecological and cultural places. And the question would be, what places need special protections and how do we protect these places? Here we have a graphic with information on engagement and a proposed roadmap that outlines the opportunities for future engagement on the QEN IPCA stewardship plan. I encourage you to pause this presentation and take a closer look at the graphic. We hope to create many opportunities for community engagement as we want this plan to be community-led and something you help create and feel proud of. Besides community workshops and surveys, we are planning on bringing together a working group made up of community representatives, including elders and youth, as well as council members and SÉOUT staff, to help with the advisory of the IPCA planning. So here I've put together some examples to demonstrate how a stewardship plan can be used to address concerns that you might have within QEN. Please keep in mind that these examples are all theoretical and are not necessarily going to be part of the QEN stewardship plan. So for example, there may be a community concern that it has become harder to catch Dungeness crab within the IPCA due to commercial harvesting. An action the stewardship plan might take is to limit commercial Dungeness crab fishing within the IPCA until populations can recover. This would likely result in more Dungeness crab being available for community to harvest within the IPCA. Another example of concern community may have is that vessel wakes are contributing to coastal erosion and disturbing cultural sites such as burials. The action that may be needed is to create no-go zones for vessels in sensitive areas and speed controls through the IPCA to reduce vessel wakes. The result would be that erosion caused by wakes are decreased and cultural sites are protected. In providing these examples, it is important to note that SÉOUT can assert its jurisdiction within QEN, but it does not guarantee that these management strategies will be upheld by the Crown. For example, if SÉOUT did decide to limit commercial Dungeness fishing within the IPCA, it would be very challenging for SÉOUT to enforce this without the support of DFO. However, it is our hope that by identifying SÉOUT's stewardship priorities and clearly describing how they can be implemented and using traditional knowledge and science to identify management's needs, that the Crown will see the benefit in supporting our stewardship plan. Another important way your input will inform the stewardship plan is to define something called zoning for the QEN T IPCA. Zoning is the process of dividing an area of water and defining what activities may take place within each area. Zoning is used to define what can and can't happen within an IPCA and is a key part of the stewardship plan. Here is an example of the Kitasoo Bay IPCA. So they have declared their IPCA and created a management plan. And in this plan, they have 3 zones defined. So one zone is general protection zone, and it is the area seen in green. And this is the least restrictive protection. There is a habitat protection zone in yellow and a restricted access zone in red, which is the most restrictive. Some activities are allowed in certain zones and not allowed in others. You'll see that cultural activities, traditional use, scientific research, and monitoring are allowed in all 3 zones, while commercial fishing, hunting, recreational fishing, and finfish aquaculture are not allowed in any of the zones. There's lots to think about when it comes to zoning, and we aren't going to get too deep into this topic today, as there are other areas we'd like to cover. But I just wanted to put this out there so that you folks can start to think about this, as we are hoping to focus on this topic in future engagement events. I think it's really interesting to start to think about how we might want to zone QEN and what activities we may allow or we may restrict. And with that being said, I'm now going to pass it over to Lais to talk more about the priorities that we're hoping to identify for the QEN stewardship plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Bridget. As Josia, my name is Lais Chavez, and I'm the Fisheries Instrument Manager. So now that you hopefully have a sense of what an IPCA is, and our proposed plan to engage with community to co-create a QEN stewardship plan, I will focus the rest of this presentation on the stewardship priorities, as what projects do we want to see prioritized within QEN? SÉAUTW Fisheries has tentatively identified five potential overarching stewardship priorities. And based on a review of traditional knowledge, literature, as well as conversations with leadership and the community, these five priorities are just a starting point, and we want to work with you folks to ensure this truly reflect the priorities the community has in mind for the IPCA. I will get into more detail on this in the following slides, but the five priorities we have identified are food sovereignty and cultural revitalization, fisheries management, restoration and monitoring, say out economic opportunities, and vessel traffic and anchorages. Food sovereignty and cultural revitalization. Central to this priority is a desire to see fisheries stewarded within the IPCA in a way that supports SAIL's Douglas Treaty right to fish as formerly. We want to protect culturally significant species, seasons, and places, including archaeological sites. We want the IPCA to support SAIL's fishers, harvesters, including SAIL commercial fishers. The IPCA will safeguard SAIL's traditional and contemporary fishing areas to ensure they are not overharvested or degraded by external pressures. Stewardship and activities carried out within QENT will encourage the transfer of knowledge and have youth learn fishing and associated teachings from elders and knowledge holders. We want to increase the number of beaches that the nation can safely harvest shellfish from. We want to connect the community back to traditional foods from the ocean. Fisheries management. The vision for this priority would be for SÉAUTW to take more of a leading role in decisions made around fisheries within QENT. Traditional knowledge, laws, and our own technical analysis would be incorporated into decision making processes and other fisheries related business. Ensure the management of the fisheries are adaptive and responsive to stock health. We want to address gear conflicts such as crab traps, getting tangled or dragged, and we want to educate non-Indigenous fisheries and DFO about sales rights to reduce harassment and conflicts. We want sail guardians on the water, ensure compliance with fisheries legislation, and provide education to other marine users. We will ensure that constitutional and Douglas Treaty rights are upheld, prioritizing Wasanich fishers and their access over the commercial and recreational industries. We want to uphold Wasanich rights and laws as they relate to SÉAUTW's marine territory and the species that call this place home. Restoration and monitoring. We want to restore and monitor the health of QENT to ensure it's bountiful for future generations. We want to use traditional knowledge to identify habitats that are historically bountiful and work to restore them and continue to steward them. We want to use traditional knowledge and continued monitoring to measure the success of the IPCA. We want to continue to collect community-based data through our monitoring programs, and we want to own this data and keep it secure. We want to have a focused effort on removing invasive European green crabs to prevent further spread and destruction. We want to promote beach and clam health through beach cleanups, turning beaches, and strict policies around pollution. We want to create resilience to climate change by encouraging natural processes that store carbon and prevent erosion. SÉAUTW economic opportunities. Central to this priority is the use of environmentally friendly and sustainable economic opportunities to create jobs and generate the revenue needed to sustainably finance the IPCA. These initiatives should not only cover operational costs, but also produce a surplus that can be reinvested to benefit the broader community. We want to support Wasanich-led sustainable commercial harvest. We want to support Wasanich-led sustainable aquaculture, such as seaweed farming. We want to encourage more community-based fisheries enterprises. We want to further explore how our IPCA may be able to create economic opportunity through the generation of carbon credits through restoration and protection. We want all marine operations that are industrial or commercial in passing through the IPCA to apply to the SÉAUTW marine use law so we can seek compensation and partnership opportunities. Vessel traffic and anchorage. The vision for this priority of vessel traffic and anchorages would be for SÉAUTW to oversee the marine users within QEN and ensure they are acting in compliance with SÉAUTW's laws and respecting sensitive sites and ecosystems. We can implement speed restrictions and designate anchorage zones to protect cultural sites and ecologically sensitive areas like eelgrass meadows. We want sail guardians to be the eyes and ears on the water and in the know of who is using the marine territory and what activities they are undertaking. We want all commercial or industrial marine use operations that pass through the APCA to hold SÉAUTW marine use law license so that we know exactly what's happening in these waters. We want to exclude harmful marine use operations from within the IPCA, for instance, bottom trawling. We also want to reduce underwater noise within the IPCA to protect marine mammals. Cumulative effects of marine shipping, or short, SEMS. Through the Cumulative Effects of Marine Shipping project, funded by Transport Canada, First Nations were able to provide input through 5 years of engagement to address the main values and concerns related to marine traffic of large and small vessels in the South Coast. Within the scope of the project, SÉAUTW was able to conduct a local assessment within the IPCA, and we included additional values to the wheel, such as marine birds and our kelp farm. With this study, we are able to identify which are the most frequent types of vessels navigating the IPCA, their impacts on the values that we want to protect, and the different ways we can address those impacts. This work is wrapping up, and we will present the results in a future community dinner. I can anticipate one interesting finding of this work is that 70% of the traffic within QEN. This work is wrapping up, and I will present the results in a future community dinner. I can anticipate one interesting finding of this work is that 70% of the traffic within QEN corresponds to smaller and tracked vessels, as you can see on the satellite image. So, how can we manage what we can't track? SÉAUTW Fishers has been working on the 5 priorities within QEN in various ways, including monitoring shellfish for pollutants and biotoxins. We successfully got an area near Saturna Island to be regularly monitored, and now it opens when conditions are safe. Prior to this, it was permanently closed. Jennifer Claxton, in her role as ReefNet Revitalization Project Coordinator, has been working with the community, Lumi relatives, and SÉAUTW youth to revitalize ReefNet fishing practices. SÉAUTW Fishers has been taking community out and plans to increase these efforts, building fishing skills within the community. Please register for fishing activities on our form or contact our Fishers Coordinator, Bridget. We are monitoring anchored boats within Sanderson Bay and kindly requesting they do not stay long term, which everyone has respected so far. Administration is also working with the government and legal counsel to investigate removing the barge operations from within Sanderson Bay. We also hired a barge and crane to remove a derelict vessel that had washed up on the shore at James Island Wharf. We have been working with marine users to get them to apply to the marine use law. The Cascada Seaweed Farm is a sustainable aquaculture initiative led by the nation. Fishers has also installed a data monitoring buoy off of James Island, where we can get real-time data on the conditions out on the water within QEN. We can also attach camera so we can monitor the smaller vessels that pass around QEN. We have been collecting data on Tayet and the salt marsh so we can better understand what species and what places we can look at restoration options for these areas. To take this assessment, we have been collecting data on Titayat in the Salt Marsh so we can better understand what species are used in these spaces and look at restoration options for these areas. Titayat is a salmon bearing stream that feeds into the IPCA. Our team has been monitoring the juveniles within the stream, and we are looking at ways to restore this habitat so it's better suited as salmon habitat. We started surveying for European green crab, but now that we have found them, we are working to eradicate them. SÉAUTW Fisheries is currently studying Indigenous crab populations in the IPCA in partnership with PhD student Nicole Jung. We are doing this to assess Indigenous crab numbers and health based on community concerns and widespread research that suggests that DFO's current management strategies may be very insufficient. Our team has been meeting with DFO to communicate sales needs as it relates to fisheries. We also presented to them on SÉAUTW IPCA. There is interest, but no notable steps have been taken on their end to engage our IPCA. So I'll close up with a hajka for watching. This has been our presentation for the IPCA. I hope you can fill out our survey with all the information you were able to gather through this presentation. Thank you and see you another day.